Welcome to Lowndes Legal Talk, where we share perspectives on legal and business issues affecting you.
Welcome. My name is John Ruffier. I am a shareholder at the Lowndes Law Firm and the chair of the firm's senior housing practice group. And normally this time of year, we host a senior housing symposium where we get industry experts to come out and speak to folks who are involved in the senior housing industry and looking for more information. Unfortunately, in the age of COVID, in-person meetings just don't happen anymore. So we are trying something new today with a podcast. So we are really lucky today to have Ken Coburn with Roche Associates to come speak with us about something that we hear from clients all the time, which is how do you deal with the challenges of keeping occupancy up, bringing in new occupants, and keeping facilities running well. And particularly in this age of COVID-19, there are just a whole group of new challenges with that. Ken has been with Roche Associates for 12 years. He's the senior vice president. And they're a full-service sales and marketing firm started back in 1981, based out of Massachusetts, although Ken is a local fellow for us, based over in Tampa, Florida. They are responsible for the fill-up and turnover of over $3.5 billion in senior housing real estate. So over their 39-year history, they have seen and done it all. Over 350 assignments for all types of senior living communities and skilled nursing facilities, and their experience is second to none. For instance, they've generated over 225,000 age and income qualified prospects and filled over 22,500 senior living units for clients while dealing with economic downturns in the industry that we see from time to time. So today, Ken is going to give us his perspective regarding what he and the Roche Associates experiences have been, what tactics and strategies are yielding the best results, and just generally giving us his insights on the senior housing industry today in the age of COVID. So Ken, welcome, and thank you for talking with us.
I appreciate the opportunity, John.
So let's just sort of start off at the top here with what messaging strategies are you all recommending, given sort of public relations challenges when you see the media sort of conflating skilled nursing and assisted living with COVID responses and really sort of creating an atmosphere where people are a little bit scared?
The messaging to prospects that we recommend is one that emphasizes the community safety protocols. Compared to other industries, senior housing has done significantly better at developing and implementing protocols to keep employees and residents safe. And this ranges from quarantining new residents for 2 weeks, strict social distancing protocols, and restricting visitors. In many cases, senior living communities are actually providing a safer environment than many people's homes, whether it's visiting family members coming in, home care workers coming in, repair service people coming in, who come and go without necessarily following the strict safety protocols found in senior living communities. We recommend to our clients that they should strive to match prospects with current residents using tools such as video chat and video testimonials. A resident testimonial should touch on the higher quality of life they're enjoying through increased socialization opportunities, how they're feeling safer, the convenience of meals, assistance with transportation needs, and so forth.
So, Ken, it's really focusing on the advantages that senior housing offers as opposed to people who are sort of out living independently and then are forced to sort of take themselves to the grocery store, not have the chance to socialize with their friends because they don't know if they've been tested or infected. So that really senior housing gives a better quality of life.
Correct.
So that, I think, is to me, a very convincing argument. And when you're doing that and you're making in-person sales more challenging because you can't meet in person as easy as you can, what platforms are you all finding to be the most effective at reaching prospects?
The best approach, based on our experience, is multichannel marketing. This can consist of a combination of digital marketing, social media, direct mail, telephone calls to prospects, and marketing events. In a first-ever survey a few years ago, sponsored by the American Senior Housing Association, 80% of senior living communities were found to have a digital strategy in place. And among the leading methods found to drive prospects was, number one, the community's website. This was followed by direct mail, educational events and community events, and social media. Facebook, obviously, was found to be the most effective social media platform. Overall, our clients have had a significant success with multi-channel marketing. From our experience, digital marketing, while helpful by itself, it is simply not a panacea. Its effectiveness is enhanced when integrated with other marketing channels. And based on current industry data and our experience, digital marketing appears to account for 12 to 15% of move-ins that can be sourced to inquiries from a community's, say, website or internet. Therefore, communities need to be aware of where the other 85 to 88% of their sales are coming from. So multi-channel marketing, including referrals from highly satisfied residents, such as family members and professional referral sources, are critical to a community trying to achieve its occupancy goals. There is simply no substitute for integrating tried and true traditional marketing channels. This can involve hosting marketing events on Zoom or FaceTime, as well as using direct mail and making personal connections by telephone.
So once the facility sort of made those initial contacts and has a prospect, interested in their facility, what are the sales and marketing strategies that are getting the best results since, sort of the traditional efforts, on-site tours and community-based events are restricted under some laws?
Well, while adhering to the COVID-19 safety protocols during the first 5 months since, say, February, communities have found that they could incorporate technology to conduct virtual tours, drive leads through effective marketing. As a reference point, from February to June, maybe we'll call this phase one, and during this period, we advise clients of the need to plan and conduct as many virtual events as possible, as well as the need to nurture their existing lead base by making goodwill telephone calls in contrast to the customary sales type calls.
Call in to check in just to say, hey, how are you doing?
How are you doing? Is there anything you need? We just wanted to stay in touch. Are you able to get your medications? Are you able to make your doctor's appointments? Are you able to get out, get your needs met, and so forth? So these are all goodwill calls. They're not meant to advance the prospect through the sales process. And making these calls, oftentimes a community may have hundreds or even thousands of prospects in their CRM database, and it's unrealistic to expect, nor is it the best use of a salesperson's time to make these telephone calls. The salesperson needs to be focusing their time in advancing their strongest potential prospects and converting them to move-ins. And a very cost-effective approach that clients rely on to have a campaign is our in-house call center, which is very effective at launching these lead-nurturing telephone campaigns. Since about the last week of July, in certain geographic areas around the country, we're seeing a transitioning to what I'll call a next phase or a phase two. And here, educational and information events can be hosted actually in banquet facilities such as country clubs, hotels, restaurants, even a community's outdoor green space where social distancing and the CDC guidelines can be strictly followed. Let me give you an example. In Danbury, Connecticut, we have a client who's developed a rental community consisting of independent living, assisted living, and memory care called Keystone Place at Worcester Heights. They're going to have a grand opening this fall. We recently orchestrated 3 in-person educational seminars at a local restaurant where safety protocols were able to be strictly enforced. We presented on 2 consecutive days, which consisted of 2 noon presentations and a dinner presentation. And for prospects who preferred the safety and comfort of their home, we conducted another online session via Zoom. Among the key ingredients for developing a successful event like this, it begins with selecting a topic that has relevance and will generate interest and enthusiasm among the prospects and perhaps their adult child. The topic that was chosen for Danbury, Connecticut was caring for an aging loved one in the time of COVID-19 and beyond. Now, the next essential element in selecting a speaker who is qualified on that particular topic that you choose to present. In the case of the topics that we're presenting, we have Dr. Joan Roche, who's a PhD RN, who is a board-certified clinical nurse specialist in gerontological nursing and also a former associate professor at UMass College of Nursing. What we have found is, on average, that about 75 to 90 people register for the event, and about half of those are registering for the live presentation. About half are registering for the Zoom presentation. However, in terms of the actual attendance, the live in-person seminar events are actually doing better than the webinar attendance. However,
I don't get a free meal on the webinar, Ken.
Let me comment about the free meal since you brought it up. So what we have found to work is one of two things. One, in some circumstances, those that come to the presentations live, we tell them that they're going to get a box lunch and or a dinner to take home. And in some cases, what we experimented with, we've actually given a gift card to a particular restaurant. Again, so we're trying to maintain the safety protocols. But the webinar format, though, has a tremendous shelf life and tremendous promotional value. It could be used over and over again, either by the community, and all registrants receive the webinar, and so they can sit down and review it with their family members and friends, and they can listen at their convenience. In the case of Danbury, let me share with you what those results were. Collectively, there were 53 total live attendees cumulatively. 10 were previous depositors, since we sent the invitation to the entire lead list. So 10 were previous depositors. So 43 people were new, had never come to the campus before. And of the 43 attendees, 40% indicated they were not familiar with the project. And of the 43 attendees, over 25%, or 12 distinct households, requested in their written survey that they wanted a salesperson to contact them to advance their interest. And another example that we did at the end of July called Daybrook Village. Daybrook Village is an independent living community in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and is part of the Berkshire healthcare system. They requested assistance for increasing their census and advancing prospects in their lead base and helping people through the sales cycle. The topic that we presented there was COVID-19, ways to protect your health, combat loneliness, and ease social isolation. This was successfully hosted actually outside on their campus under a tent. And so we did 2 consecutive days, 2 noon presentations and 2 5 p.m. presentations. On the third day, we did a virtual Zoom presentation that was also offered. The results were these. 35 total prospects attended the live presentations. 10, or about 32%, requested on their written survey that they wanted a salesperson to follow up with them to advance their interest. So as things continue to improve, we may see a transition actually to what I'll call phase 3, where more events can be hosted on site or at a off-site banquet location, but still able to maintain safety and prevention protocols. So the new normal going forward may be lower attendance at some of these on-site marketing events than communities may have enjoyed in the past. But let me point out that what we have found is that the people who do show up at these events are highly qualified, highly motivated. So by leveraging multi-channel marketing, which, again, consists of traditional mix of direct mail, follow-up RSVP telephone calls, it allows communities to generate a significant amount of turnout, which then has been driving tours, driving deposits, and been driving move-ins. Also, let me mention that the community's website should have a landing page to enable prospects, obviously, to register. And again, it cannot be emphasized strongly enough that event marketing results in driving very highly qualified leads. But it's up to the sales team to be very effective once the prospects make an appointment to help drive prospects through the sales cycle.
Yeah, so Ken, to that point, obviously it sounds like the sort of return on investment with these in-person events has been pretty outstanding. But obviously that opportunity comes the importance of sales training and making sure that folks follow through. How does Roche Associates approach this challenge for its clients?
The Roche Associates recognized early on that some adaptations needed to be made in terms of helping salespeople prosper and thrive during this time, shifting to more an empathetic approach. And so we designed a new half-day sales training program, and it's delivered as a live interactive webinar using a Zoom platform. The good news is that leveraging such technology saves operators a significant amount of money. Say an operator has 5 or 10 communities in different geographic areas. We're able to simulcast the training instruction, but charge one single fee that can be divided among all their communities.
Got it. So again, it's sort of not dissimilar to using the webinars for a facility. You can keep using it over and over again, and similarly with your leads training, instead of having to bring people from 10 places to one spot, people in 10 spots can view the one.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So Ken, I know this, but I'm not sure that people listening to this know this, but I know that one of the sort of key things that separates you all from other people who do similar work is that a lot of times you all actually put skin in the game with clients and when you're helping them, particularly in a turnaround situation. Can you share a little bit about how y'all do that?
Sure. We have typically 2 or 3 types of assignments. One is where somebody has a more distressed situation. They need us to come in and figure out and do an assessment. And then there's those that have their census they feel that has contracted, particularly during this time, but they may have been in the low to mid-90s before this time. In the case of Keystone Place in Danbury, Connecticut, that's a startup community. Here we are retained about the time of the groundbreaking to orchestrate every aspect of the fill-up. This included pre-sales, positioning, pricing strategies, developing a strategic marketing plan, along with a detailed line item budget, and a fill-up schedule. This also includes weekly scheduled sales and marketing conferences and site visits to recommend strategies and tactics to advance prospects through the sales cycle. At a firm, and we believe we're one of the only firms to put skin in the game, the way that works is once there's an agreement on the sales and marketing budget, we typically will risk or defer up to half of our fees based upon the fill-up benchmarks. For turnaround situations and communities whose census have been stagnant, we complete an initial assessment, and based on our findings, we'll develop a customized proposal outlining our recommended scope of services consistent with what we find. Again, depending on the individual turnaround circumstance and the prevailing situation, time frames, budgets, we also will discuss deferring a percentage of our fees for turnaround assignments.
So by having skin in the game, you all have the sort of an aligned interest with your client and that you want sales to happen as fast as possible. And we've talked a little bit about sort of COVID and the advance or the increased use of technology to reach prospects. Now, I'm a ways away from needing to go into a senior living community, hopefully, but, I know I still struggle with technology a little bit. So I'm curious as to what are some of the challenges faced by your sales teams when it comes to using technology, virtual tours and things like that, and how do you overcome those things?
Well, that's an excellent point. Prospects may not have the technical capability or the comfort level with technology that many communities are using. They may have difficulty joining Zoom, for example. Salespeople, they may also need to be trained and feel comfortable with the technology. Or the sales team should have a readily available tech-savvy staff to call upon. The primary challenge that must be overcome with technology is building and developing the all-important relationship and trust. And unlike real estate sales, advancing senior living prospects through the sales funnel requires an emotional connection that comes from building trust. And while we're in the midst of a pandemic, these attributes are of even greater importance. Families need to have a certain level of confidence that their family member will not only be happy and cared for, but they will feel safe. And in our training modules, we will teach and train salespeople how to develop their messaging and how to engage and build trust, which is all important at converting a prospect into a move-in.
So this leads me to sort of another question, which is sort of the flip side. So after you've got somebody who's a move-in, you want them to keep being happy and their family being comfortable that they're in there and not have them become a move-out, which then creates a new occupancy problem. So I'm curious, particularly, again, as we've talked about, there are all these restrictions on visitations. How has communicating with existing residents and their families changed?
Well, it's always been very important to communicate with residents and families. And during the pandemic, we emphasized to clients to communicate regularly. In fact, we stress that you really cannot over-communicate. So what we emphasize is that you should highlight your protocols, reinforce the benefits of living in your senior living community. As an example, we recommend weekly video updates, such as any changes that have been to your safety or housekeeping protocols, highlight activities of the past week. There's also a useful app called One Day that we found is also extremely beneficial to record residents that want to share some experience or something that happened in their life.
So it sort of helps the families feel like they're there even though they can't visit.
Precisely.
So with all these challenges, obviously there are still people who are moving into communities. While we're seeing some occupancy challenges, we're not seeing a free fall either. So I'm curious, how would you characterize the prospects who have actually decided and moved in during this period? Are they those who would have moved in, whether there was a pandemic or not, or did the pandemic actually, incentivize them to make a move?
Clearly all of the above. COVID-19 has impacted move-ins both positively and negatively, as you pointed out. For example, prospects who may have considered moving are hesitant for many reasons. Among the primary reason is the continued limitation on family members and friends being able to visit, even though Florida has begun to relax those restrictions. But among our current clients, what we have observed is this during the pandemic. Approximately 80% of the move-ins are need-based, and by this I mean that they were not capable of remaining independent in their current home and were likely discharged perhaps from a hospital or a post-acute facility. The remaining 20% of the move-ins were seniors who were choosing either independent or assisted living as a lifestyle choice. And in the case of assisted living, some seniors have made the move earlier than perhaps they would have otherwise. And the primary reason is they were seeking some safe and convenient access to certain needed or desired services, such as meals or transportation, or not wanting to be socially isolated at home, or dependent upon their family or outside home care people coming in, while trying to maintain their own personal safety and also the fear from being exposed to the virus. With that said, what we have found that our clients have had more success than their respective competitors when it comes to the actual number of move-ins since the onset of COVID-19. We largely attribute this to the fact that they have done a better job at connecting with prospects, educating them about their community safety measures, emphasizing the lifestyle benefits, and most importantly, the ability to effectively differentiate their community from the other available options that a prospect might be considering.
Well, so if your clients are top of class on this, obviously, no doubt, because of your help, I'd be curious, can you share with us some sort of particular marketing messages that appear to be resonating best with potential residents?
Well, there are two distinct resident groups that require two different messages. You have the independent living prospect, and you have the assisted living memory care situation. Most of the people moving into senior living at this point are primarily need-driven, where they simply cannot function at home or feel safe doing so. Add to this the increasing stress that COVID-19 has placed on family members. It's motivating the adult child to more proactively familiarize themselves and conduct research regarding senior living options. The message that the community wants to convey and to emphasize is that their community is responsive to residents' evolving needs and concerns, that their community is a place where your loved one can feel safe, have their medications, healthcare assistance, socialization needs met, and where there's an ongoing review in the community of all the protocols, best practice training for all employees as it pertains to ongoing and continuous quality and safety control measures. Now, regarding independent living prospects, the marketing message that seems to resonate is addressing how living at your particular community helps them overcome the feeling of social isolation brought about by sheltering at home. We recommend that the marketing message start with the need-driven angle and then advance your message by advancing the socialization aspect. The literature obviously is replete now with documentation demonstrating the physiological and psychological consequences of prolonged isolation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, about 80% of all move-ins taking place or at least in our client communities during the pandemic have been need-driven. And certainly COVID-19 was the impetus in that decision. However, our clients have done a good job at execution, particularly when it comes to differentiating their communities from their primary competitors. This is not to say that the move-ins would have simply occurred naturally, certainly not without doing their foundational work, but it does entail an understanding of what the critical elements and value propositions are being put forward and explaining to prospects what differentiate their community versus their competitors.
Got it. So, again, I'm sorry to keep shifting gears on you, Ken, but even before the pandemic hit, the market had a lot of new facilities coming on that was creating occupancy challenges, not just with fill-up for the new facilities, but, existing facilities that suddenly have more competition in the market. So when an owner-operator hires you all to assist them in either doing a fill-up or helping improve their occupancy goals, I'm curious, what are the sort of things that you all collect information-wise, and what are you looking for when you're doing that analysis on how to help?
Well, a sample of the initial information we request from a client after signing a non-disclosure agreement, of course, and it depends, again, on how old the community is, but assuming it's a newer facility, for example, we request the market feasibility study because we want to look at what the assumptions were that supported the number of units and the mix of units. We request the number of leads in their lead base. Do they have a sufficient number of leads to fill the number of vacant units? For example, some communities, particularly assisted living and memory care, tend to underestimate the projected turnover within their community. And projected turnover within an assisted living community or memory care, it can range from anywhere from 35 to 50%. And one of the implications is that the sales and marketing budget may not be sufficient to drive enough leads to address both current vacancies and those generated by move-outs. We also request the current year's strategic marketing plan and the supporting budget. Here we're looking at how well they understand their competitors, their positioning strategies to compete against them. Oftentimes we'll find a plan that has a lot of creative tactics, but little strategy behind them. When it comes to the budget, we sometimes see a lack of proportion in terms of an over-reliance on one or two marketing channels while maybe ignoring or limiting investment in others. We request the rent roll and a number of other sales metrics. What we're looking to study here ranges from trends in turnover, tours, deposits, the location and sources of their move-ins. Is there an over-reliance, for example, on third-party aggregators, where conversion rates are often less than 20%? In contrast with, say, a mature community, one that's been open, say, 3 or more years, the community should actually see a substantial number of leads coming from referrals from residents and family members. I'd like to just highlight this a moment because it's so critical. This is why we request the community satisfaction survey. There was a very important study done by Margaret Wild who pointed out that while a community may have many satisfied residents, referrals made by residents are only made by those residents who are very satisfied. In other words, those that check the box that say that they're very satisfied versus simply checking the box that say that they're satisfied.
So it's not good enough to like the community. They need to love the community.
That correlation was done on a very broad and extensive research study done by well-respected ProMature, Margaret Wild's company. And so we actually go in and do very in-depth resident focus group surveys. And in fact, in today's environment, we can still do this safely. These are not gripe sessions. Residents don't put their name on the survey or identify themselves. What we're trying to look at is we're trying to ask residents very critical questions to achieve a more in-depth understanding as to how they came to select the community and why they moved into that particular community. Who did they shop beforehand? Who was influential in their decision? How likely are they to recommend the community to a friend? And if so, what reasons would they give their friend? So there's a goldmine of valuable information that can help the community fine-tune its positioning and its messaging strategies. And depending on the situation, we could either mystery shop the sales director, or we can do it in person, we could do it on phone, or we can spend a day in the trenches with the sales director doing some role-playing scenarios. And again, we want to see how well the sales director can execute through the various key points of a sales process, and how well they understand their own community and can differentiate it with their competitors.
One thing that seems to be happening a little more often, and I think it's because folks are getting nervous with the new challenges in increasing move-ins and keeping occupancy up, is an increase in discounting offers to discount resident fees and costs. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that as a strategy and whether it is effective.
We've helped clients through several economic downturns over the decades. There are circumstances where we've actually recommended that communities consider offering targeted incentives, such as discounting the community fee. However, to take advantage of the incentive, a prospect has to move in, say, within a certain time frame, say 30 to 60 days. Another incentive is offering to pay moving costs up to a certain amount if the prospective resident, say, moves in by a certain date. We generally do not recommend lowering monthly rates or waiving certain level of care rates, since what we have observed is that it can be difficult to restore those rates and can negatively impact, and significantly so, both revenues and operations.
No, that makes sense, because, margins are already tight even at the best of times. If you start cutting costs on a lot of folks who move in, you're starting yourself at such a disadvantage. And then I feel like that's got to have cascading effects on level of care and ability to staff and sort of all the things that you just talked about that then make residents have that shift from liking a facility to loving a facility, where you get the recommendations. And you just, exactly. It's sort of a snowball effect. So are there any silver linings from a marketing perspective? Are there any hidden benefits that maybe are advantageous to the industry that we've learned or that we may see going forward as a result of this pandemic?
I think everybody's in the early learning process. Certainly, many people across all age groups have a better firsthand understanding, first of all, and have developed a higher level of empathy from their own sheltering-in-place experience and understanding as to what the toll of social isolation is like, and what many seniors will be faced with long after this pandemic period passes. Another hidden benefit is that the adult children, who are not only dealing with their own challenges, plus helping their parent, they've now found themselves having to play a more hands-on role as the pandemic has grown and lasted as long as it has. And therefore, they've gained a greater appreciation for the role and advantages offered by assisted living, such as medication management, managing transportation, and making appointments to meals and social engagement. Interestingly, there was another survey that came out this summer that was sponsored by OSHA, and it identified the fact that adult children actually had a more favorable opinion of assisted living. So I think this combination of factors where people understand across all age groups what social isolation is like and what the toll is, and I think that combination will further help to enhance the industry's public understanding and perception of senior living.
Yeah, I think all of us, trapped in our houses suddenly have a little better understanding of what it's like for, an an older family member who may still be staying at home, but they're not getting out every day, as their mobility decreases. And the real advantage that I hear so often from folks moving into senior living communities is their social life gets so much better. And there's so many benefits to that, just the human interaction, on cognitive abilities and preventing deterioration and things like that, that it's interesting that I think maybe now folks are finally starting to understand that, gosh, it's not being warehoused. It's actually just a whole new way of life where you really are living a lot better life day to day than if you stayed alone in your own home.
That's right. It comes down to the quality of life, and the understanding among prospects today is they want to carry on their life and be safe and have their needs addressed without having an overdependence on their family members, because they can see the stress and strain that their adult children have in terms of jobs, in terms of taking care of their own family. So it's been a slow learning process. Again, communities have to continuously be proactive, and I think we covered a number of areas where they can become proactive and educate prospects.
Ken, I cannot thank you enough for taking time and sort of sharing your info and expertise. I know that, you and I have talked a few times leading up to this to sort of figure out what we wanted to discuss and talk through things. I can't tell you how much I've learned just from talking to you and really sort of benefiting from your experience. And I know that, you all are offering a special bonus to folks who have listened all the way through this and are liking what you're hearing and are sort of realizing the benefit of what you all offer. And I think it's pretty tremendous that you all are willing to do an hour free with them, an hour telephone consultation, just by saying that they've listened to this podcast and that they like I, always will enjoy wanting to hear more from you and benefiting from your wisdom. And I think they can call you directly, giving out your number at 813-786-8495. Again, 813-786-8495. Ken is an incredible resource, so I encourage everybody to take advantage of it, as I have certainly been taking advantage of Ken for the last few days and picking his brain on this stuff. So we really appreciate the time you've given us today.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity as well, John. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Lowndes Legal Talk. For more information about today's topic or to learn more about our attorneys and practices, please visit lowndes-law.com.